Gemara Pesachim Daf Chav Hey. The month of Tevis is sponsored by close friend of the Daf, Lili Nishmas Aryalib Ben Yaakov, as well as Leah Rasha Bas Aryalib. The yahrzeit of Aryalib Ben Yaakov is today, the first of Tevis, the day of Gemara Pesachim Daf Chav Hey. All the learning of the entire Chabura should be Eschos Ili Nishmasai. Of course, we can't forget Allah Chaim Chaim Minchas Ben Maki. Remember, Kiev Chaim Neveg Chaim Sershon Simon. He's a little. Sorry about Skinati, but see, it's Chayzei, Chaim Sarezi, Yosel Mendel, the Shavlei, Shem Zanavi, Shavigo, Shem Khan, Veldavini Triva, the Nail Ben Chanaviz, Yosel Chaim, and Yehuda, Librach, Batavia Musa, Avram Siva, Menashe, Eshe, Mechel, Siva, Bastavi, Yehuva, Pseu Shachli, Yisrael, Chosiva, Regatalea, Bas, Ita. We pick it up on the bottom of Chav Kimlam and Beis, about 10 lines on the bottom. First one line is Abayi. Omer Abayi, says Abayi, Hakol Modim Klaya Kerim, Shaloikin Aleim, Afilu, Shaloik Derech Hanasim. Everyone admits that Klaya Kerim, that when you plant two different species that are not allowed to be planted together, everyone agrees that if you do that, you get Malchus. Afilu Shaloik Derech Hanasim, and even if you do it, the not normal way of getting Hana. This is obviously a continuation of yesterday's daf, that when we spoke, there are all these students, Shabbatayra, Rav Yochanan taught us, you only get Malchus if you eat them the normal way. The second lashon was if you get benefit from them the normal way. We said it comes to exclude if you eat items which are raw, if you use items to smear on a wound which aren't normal. Now says Abayi, but everyone agrees by Klaya Kerem, you're only going to get Malchus if you do it the normal fashion. My time. What's the reason? Mishum achila, because it doesn't say by Klaya Kerem achila, meaning it doesn't say that the only thing that is aser is eating Klaya Kerem when you plant together grapes and grains, etc., etc. Therefore, we see that even other ways of getting Hana is going to be forbidden. So, Meisvei Isi ben Yehuda. Meisvei Isi ben Yehuda Imer. Gemara asked from Isi ben Yehuda. This is going to be a bit of a long question. So, just hold on top. This question is going to go for the next, 10, 15 lines. Says Isi ben Yehuda. Menayin lebasar v'chalav shu aser. He starts off, how do you know basar v'chalav, cooking meat and milk, is forbidden? Says the Gemara Nemer Kan, it says, Ki am kadosh ata, you're a holy nation. V'nemar, and it says, La'alon, furthermore, Vanshi kodesh tiyuni, and a holy nation you should be to me. Ma'alal aser, Afkan aser. So just like over there is referring to something that is forbidden, so to over here, basar v'chalav is referring to something that is forbidden. Says the Gemara, Ve'in li ela ba'achila. So good, this is basically the same thing. Whenever we say something is aser, the first idea is it's aser ba'achila. Ba'ana, minayin. How do you know it is as well aser behana? Amrei kal v'chaymer. So again, we're trying to figure out how do we know basar v'chalav is forbidden behana from benefit. Says the Gemara, we have a pasuk am kadosh v'anshei kodesh tiyuli. Says the Gemara, that teaches you can't eat it. How do you know you can't get benefit? Says the Gemara, kal v'chaymer. Uma arlo shlei nevda b'ya aveira. Arla, the produce of the first 2 years. Did you do an aveira on those produce? Of course not. They're just aser because that is the status of all fruits the first 2 years. And yet, ma arlo shlei nevda aveira. Asura, yet it's forbidden, says the Gemara 2 lines on the bottom. Basur ma'ana, bas v'chal shenevd b'yavir. You're over an iser. You cooked meat and milk together. Ein adin she aser b'ana. Should also be aser b'ana. So again, the Gemara is teaching us. Number 1, anchi kodesh chiyun li. That teaches me bas v'chal you cannot eat. Number 2, kal v'chaymer from arla. Arla, you cannot get benefit. Says the Gemara, so too bas v'chalav. Seemingly, you cannot get benefit. Moving along to Chavayim and Aleph. Now we continue this kal v'chaymer. Mal arla shkin la yisla shasai koisher. Arla has a weakness to it. It never had a moment of being mutter. Arla, the produce of the first 3 years, from the moment of their inception, the moment of their birth, the moment of their growth, it is forbidden. There's not one moment where it's mutter. However, says the Gemara, we know basar v'chalav has a moment where it's permitted. So maybe that should show us that basar v'chalav is not the same as Arla. Answers the Gemara, chametz b'pesach yechiach. You know what's going to prove you? Eating chametz on Pesach. That what? There was a moment it was permitted before Pesach came, and yet basar ba'ana, it's aser ba'ana. So we think the same thing is going to be by basar v'chalav. Says the Gemara 1 second. Ooh, maybe that's the reason. You know why it's aser ba'ana? Because chametz on Pesach has a punishment of karis, a very stringent, very chamerdik punishment. Are you going to prove to me from there basar v'chalav which does not get karis? Answers the Gemara, and as everyone's been waiting, what in the world does that have to do with Klaya Karim? Abaye is in. Here we finally get there. So once we figured out that Basar V'Chalav is not only forbidden to eat, it's also forbidden in benefit, because we learned it out from Chometz and Pesach, because we learned it out from Orla. Says the Gemara, Klaya Karim Yechiach. Klaya Karim is going to tip the scales. That was She'ein Oynish Karis. It does not have such a stringent punishment, and yet it's going to be forbidden Anah. So that is the end of a very lengthy Gezeirus Kal V'Chomer, I should say, that we learned out that Basar V'Chalav you cannot get benefit. Now, says the Gemara, Ve'im Isa, and if you're going to tell me, like Abaye said, that all items, Klaya Karim, the vineyard, the greens and grapes that are planted together, that everyone agrees that you could only get Malchus. If you got benefit in the normal fashion of getting benefit, you know what you could do? Nifreich. You could ask in the Kal V'Chomer that we just said. We just allowed Klaya Karim to be a critical ingredient to the Kal V'Chomer of Basar V'Chalav. But says the Gemara, well, how do you know that? You know what we could say? The reason why Klaya Karim is Asr B'Hana, you know why? Nifreich. Malik Klaya Karim, Shkein Loikin Aleim, Afilish Loik Derech Hanasan. That they only get that they're going to get Malchus, even not the normal fashion. Which, of course, if you look back on Amud Beis before, what did Abaye say? Hakol Moedim Klai Karen, they get Malchus, even they're not normal fashion. So says the Gemara, that's a stringency of Klai Karen. That even if you get benefit in the abnormal fashion, you still get Malchus. So maybe that's the reason why they're forbidden in benefit. So says the Gemara, this is part of the Gemara's question, I'm sorry. This is the question of Isi ben Yehuda asking on Abaye, how can you tell me that? Again, let's get over the bigger picture. Abaye said, Klaya Karen, you only get Malchus if you get benefit in the normal fashion. Why? Because he said it doesn't say Achila. Isi ben Yehuda came along and said, how do you know that's true? If you're right, Abaye, that the only way you get Malchus is if you use the Klaya Karen, the forbidden grapes and the grains that are planted together in the normal fashion, but you do not get them if they're not going but you do not get, if they did not get benefit in the normal fashion. Sorry, let me say that one more time. What did Abaye say? I'm sorry. Hakol Moedim B'Klaya Karim, that you get Malchus even when you get it abnormal fashion. There you go. Now everyone, I'm sorry. Everyone was wondering, that made no sense. Correct. It didn't make sense. Let's fix that up. Again, the stringency of Klaya Karim is you're going to get Malchus even if you got benefit in an abnormal way. You use it in a strange way. Like we said yesterday, we used it on a wound, something abnormal. Says the Gemara, by Klaya Karim, you're going to get Malchus. If that's true, ask Isi ben Yehuda. So maybe that's the reason why this or no. Says the Gemara, good question, Isi. V'Abaye, what's Abaye going to answer back? Toimer, he's going to say, B'mai Toimer. What is he going to conclude? If you're right, you're asking me that maybe Klaya Karim has this very stringent part of it, that it gets Malchus even when you have an abnormal benefit. So what's that going to result in? If you input that into the Kal V'Chomer, what are you going to get? That Basar V'Chalav she'ein loikin lavel derech hanasan. So then you're going to tell me that Basar V'Chalav is different because you only get Malchus if you did it the normal fashion, and that's why it's going to be different. Klaya Karen, you're going to get Malchus even if you got abnormal benefit. Basar V'Chalav is only normal benefit. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? Says Abaye, doesn't say Achila. So how do you know that Basar V'Chalav is only the normal fashion? You have no way of knowing that. Therefore, says Abaye, your question is incorrect. V'edoch, what is the questioner or the Isi ben Yehuda ask on Abaye? To Concise. La Suffer, what does he hold? This is why we equated Klaya Karen to Nevela, Ma Nevela. I'm sorry, that's why we equated Basar V'Chalav, to Nevela. That Ma Nevela derech hanasa, you only get Malchus if you get normal benefit. Basar V'Chalav derech hanasa. So what does Abaye do with that part? Abaye lachi lo ksev achila begufay. Lo ksev achila. By Basar V'Chalav doesn't say achila. Begufay loymar, to teach me shaloikin alav afilu shaloikin derech hanasan. That's why it teaches me that. It doesn't say achila by Basar V'Chalav to teach me you're going to get Malchus even in an abnormal fashion. And that is the end of the potential question on Abaye from Isi ben Yehuda, from the fact that if Abaye was right, there's a very large stringency that Klaya Karim are getting Malchus even for abnormal benefit. And the Gemara defended Abaye's opinion that it's not going to necessarily work because then Basar V'Chalav should be different, and we know that's not true. Says the Gemara, V'lifreich, going back to our Kal V'Chomer. On the top of the Amud, we had Kal V'Chomer, we had Arla, We had a basar v'chalav, we had chametz on Pesach, trying to prove that there are asar ba'ana. And then we brought in klei karim as the final nail to show us that klei karim, they're asar ba'ana, so to these other items. Says Gemara now, v'lifrech, I'll ask you a question. You know why klei karim are forbidden benefit? Because they don't have a shas kosher. There's not one moment that they are permitted. That's why they have this stringency. Amar Ravada Barava Zoisameres, Klaya Karen, Ikaran, Nesarin. From here we see that Klaya Karen, the Ikar, the roots, are forbidden. Hoyel Vaislan Shasai Kosher. Koidima Shasha. Says Ravada Barava, no, you have a great question. And know what that shows? That you're incorrect in the din. That really Klaya Karen, when you plant the grapes with the grains together, since it has a moment before they intermingle, before they breed together, you have a stalk of grain and a stalk of grape. They did not grow together. They have a Shasai Kosher, Koidima Shasha. Therefore, that's the reason why it's only going to be asr once it takes root. Ikaron, when it takes root, nasarin, that is when it will be forbidden. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So what did you just tell me? You just told me that all klaya karen, when you plant grapes with grain, the first moment they grow, they're not together yet, they don't have an isser hana, they're not forbidden. Then when they start growing together, that's when they're asr. Masar of Shemaya, is that true? Hamavir atas nakam bekarem, that if, and I'm sorry, and the next step of the previous Gemara was, and therefore, but once they start growing together, then it's all going to be forbidden. Even the part that grew prior. You're not going to say only after it grows together it's forbidden, everything's going to be forbidden. So Masar of Shemaya, 1 second. Hamaver atis naka b'karim. If you have a atis naka, which is a flower plot with a hole in it, which the important point of that is, therefore, it's considered to get nourishment from the ground. So if you transplant such a flower plot, you have a flower plot with grain, and you have a vineyard of grapes, so you hold that flower plot of grain over the vineyard as you're walking. So as you're walking, it's getting nourishment from the grapes underneath. So in Maisav Masayim Aser, if as you walk it adds onto it a 200th, then it be called Kalayim. Aser. Says the Gemara, seemingly only if it's a 200th. What's 200? Rashi explains that normally it's going to be 100. By normally Yisurin Shabbat, but over here there's an extra stringency by Klaya Karim that not only is Asr Achila, it's also Asr and Hana, and therefore we double up the Isser and it's only going to be bottled in 200. But what do we see? That we see that if Ilamaisa grows, then it's going to be forbidden just from that moment. But you just told me a moment ago that once it mingles together, it's forbidden even in all the previous parts of it. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, you are correct, but there's two different lemudim treikra ksiv hazera uksiv hamaleya. It says that which grew. It says let's the Gemara explain. Hakit said, what are these two psukim? Zarua meikaroi bashrasha zarua. I'm sorry, zarua meikaroi bashrasha. That's one case. Zarua ba haisif. But if it's planted and then you walk with it, again, if it's if you planted the two species together, but they just didn't grow together yet, but they were planted together, then the moment they grow together, the whole item, even the first part of the growth, is forbidden. But if it's already a plant, you have this flower pot with grain in it, it's already a plant, and then you just walked over and it got nourishment, in that case will only be forbidden if it's on the 200, if it's only going to be the extra, but the entire item will not be forbidden. Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yechon. And that's the end of that discussion. Again, let's get a quick recap. We started off today with the din of Abayi. The Abayi taught us Kalaya Karim, and that was the whole Amid. It was all about Kalaya Karim. Was that these Kalayim, the mixture of the vineyard, grapes, and wheat, which are not allowed to be planted together, says Abayi, if you have any benefit, even an abnormal benefit, you get a no. Isi ben Yehuda asked a long-winded question. That Abayi, if you're correct, it comes out that Klaya Karim has an extreme stringency. Said we won't be able to use it as part of a Kal V'Chomer. We had a Kal V'Chomer trying to figure out what's Asr and Hana, Chametz and Pesach, etc. Says the answer to Abayi, no, it's not true. So not necessarily have to do with the stringency of Klaya Karim. And then the Gemara just segued from there to try to learn out what are the dinim of Klaya Karim. When do they come forbidden? Is it from the moment it grows, or is it retro, or is it prior? And the Gemara proved these two different cases. If it was something that grew and then you carried it over, it'll only be forbidden the additional growth. But if you planted two items together, the moment they start growing together, everything is going to be forbidden. Now comes along Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yechanan, a bit of a, I don't want to call it an easier Gemara, a bit of a less complicated Gemara, I guess we'll say it like that, after some more complicated Gemaras previously. Says Rav Yaakov, Rav Yechanan, B'chol misrab b'chutz me'aseh you're allowed to get benefit. You're allowed to use it to heal with any item in the world, aside for the Atzei Ashera. What's Atzei Ashera? Ashera is a tree that was worshipped for the Zara. The wood from that tree, you're not going to be allowed to get benefit from. Says the Gemara, Echidami. What's the case? If the guy's life is at risk, should be allowed to get benefit from even the wood of the Asher tree, because you can use anything to save a life. The Gemara thinks right now. If there's no sakana, then you won't be able to transgress any yisur. So what's the case over here? Says the Gemara, really there is yes sakana, the life is at danger. Why? Because it's Asherah, it's Avodah Zarah, it's one of the three cardinal sins, as the Gemara now explains. If it says you have to serve God with your whole soul, what if say with all your possessions? If he likes his body more than his money, you can't give up. You have to give up your body literally for God, meaning that you can't kill for the benefit of, you can kill, as we'll see in the Gemara in a moment. And as well, they have to serve Hashem with all your possessions. This is the beginning of a beautiful and not such lengthy discussion about what Yisurim one is allowed to be over to save his life. As the Gemara says, you got to get healed. Someone's life is at danger, and this avodah zarah, they can heal him. No way. One of the three cardinal sins. What else? You can't be over illicit relations. And finally says the Gemara, you're never allowed to kill. Says the Gemara, that which we just saw a moment ago from Nazi Ashera. How do you know that one is not allowed to transgress illicit relations, or one is not allowed to transgress, I should say. One is not allowed to commit murder to save a life. Titania, do you learn to the Raisa? Rabbi Yomer, when one gets up against his friend, what does the pasuk says? Nefesh, and he tries to kill him. So too is this thing. This thing, what's this thing? The previous Pesachim. What's the previous Pesachim? The Nair Amarasa. We have a girl that someone's trying to force her to have relations, and now the Torah is equating it to someone killing someone. Says the Gemara, what's going on? What's Keina Davar Hazeh? So to this matter, that this thing of murder is seemingly going back on the previous case of this betrothed girl who's potentially going to be raped, that someone's trying to sleep with her forcefully. What do the two have to do with each other? Says the Gemara, it's coming to learn something out, v'nimsa, and it comes out, lamad. We learn out from it. Makish roitzeach l'nayram rasa. We equate the roitzeach, the one who's coming to commit murder, to l'nayram rasa, someone who's trying to force a girl to have relations. You're allowed to save a life through it, meaning it's one of the three cardinal sins. Not only do the three cardinal sins are you not allowed to transgress them, also if someone is trying to transgress that to you, you're allowed to kill them. Someone's coming to shoot you, you're allowed to shoot him first. Just like if someone's coming to commit an illicit relationship, you're allowed to kill him. Now the Gemara says, flips the other way. So just like by murder, if someone says kill this person, you got to say no. Yahareg, kill me. I will not transgress. Poor timing with Chanukah. We know the whole Chanukah story started from Yehudis who would not allow herself to be slept with, who would not go over, and she was willing to give up her life. Someone has to give up their life and not be over and commit illicit relations. And so says the Gemara, okay, but how do you know that death itself is one of the three cardinal sins? Says the Gemara, Svaru, it's a beautiful logic. The Rav came in front of Rav Amarle Mari Dare. Amarle Zel Plania, the person in the town, is telling me to kill someone. And if I don't kill him, he's going to kill me. What should I do? You got to let yourself be killed. And you can't kill someone else. Why? Who says your blood is redder than his? Maybe his blood is more, his blood is redder. And that is the svara of the Gemara, the svara Sakra, says the Gemara that you're not allowed to commit murder. Who says he's better than you? We can't weigh life. So if someone says kill him or we kill you, we got to put up our hands and unfortunately let ourselves be killed, even though that itself is one of the three cardinal sins. Says the Gemara, My Rav Ashi saw Ravina who's rubbing some oils onto his daughter's skin beguraki de urla with some unripe olive oil of arla. Amar lei. So he said to him, Rava, when do we say you're allowed to transgress? You're allowed to use arla, which is obviously forbidden. I'm sorry, Ravina. When do we say that? When there's a sakana, life's a danger. So what are you doing? You're using this arla, which has an insert on it, to rub it into your daughter's skin. How are you allowed to do that? Amar lei. So Ravina responded, this girl has a burning fever, high fever. That itself is like a sakana. Igidiyamri says the Gemara, another pshat. Midi derech hanok avina. It's not the normal way of getting benefit. So with this, Ravina is answering that you're allowed to get benefit from an item in an abnormal fashion, even if it's not a sakana. And that's what he's saying. The oils are not normally used for this type of healing. That's what I'm doing, and that's the reason why it's mutter. Itmar says the Gemara, hano abolo de'adam bal karchai. Starting off a very lengthy discussion, we're just going to begin it today. Benefit that comes to a person bal karchai without his will, just to give a case to put into people's brains, then it's going to clarify throughout the Gemara. For example, on Pesach, we're not allowed to get enough from chametz. So you allowed to go and walk by a non-kosher bakery, perfect Krispy Kreme or something like that. I don't say not kosher. Go into the factories or something like that just to get a benefit. But what if it just comes to you bal karcha? You happen to be there. You're walking in a mall, and all of a sudden this beautiful smell comes into your nostrils. You didn't want it. You didn't try to have it. Hana adam bal karcha, against his will. What is the status of that? Abaye Amar mutares, Rav Amar asura. Says the Gemara, there's 4 potential permutations in this case, and then we're going to have an Ikad Yamri, a second Lashon, within these 4 cases. Let's let the Gemara explain. Says the Gemara, Efshar v'kam echavin, if you could potentially get the benefit, potentially not get the benefit, you didn't have to go get that smell, and you had intent, you're like, I could use a good smell right now. So you go walk into that bakery, that's one case. Or, even when it's impossible. But while you're there, you say, this is a great smell. You have intent for that smell. Everyone agrees that is forbidden. Case number 1 and case number 2. If it's impossible and you didn't have kavana, you're just walking there, you didn't even know it was there. It was lo yavshar. And all of a sudden, you don't have intent, all of a sudden it shoots into your nose, everyone agrees it's shari. What's case number 3? Case number 4 is the machlekes Rav and Abaye. Again, Abaye that said it's mutter, Rav said it's aser. Keep ligi, what's the machlekes? The efshar v'loika mechavin. You didn't have to be there. It was possible to not get that smell. It was possible to not get that benefit, but you didn't have kavana. So how do we view that? According to Rav Yehuda that says whenever you do something without intent, that's forbidden. Rav Yehuda holds anything without intent is forbidden. So too in this case, very simple. What's the machlekes? Keep legally with Rav Shimon, which is obviously what we paskin. We paskin, if you do something without any intent at all, many cases about Shabbos we had this way, that's going to be mutter. So what's going to be in this case, where it was efshar v'loy mechavin? You were possible to not be there, but you didn't have a kavanah, you didn't have intent to get this benefit. By Rav Shimon, by says it's mutter like Rav Shimon. Rav Amar Adkan l'kamer Rav Shimon. Eleicha d'loy efshar. Rav Shimon's a whole din of davar shein miskavin, says Rav, that's only when it's impossible. Eleicha d'efshar, you didn't have to be there. Loy, then Rav Shimon does not say his din. Says Rava, it is forbidden. First lashon of the Gemara. Igad Yarmi says the Gemara, another lashon. If it's a case where you didn't have to be there and you did not have intent, says the Gemara, which I'm sure many people are thinking that seemingly sounds like Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, that it's possible to not be there, but you didn't have kavanah. It's every davar shein miskavin seemingly. You didn't have to do this, but you didn't have intent. Rav Yehuda says it's also, Rav Shimon says it's mutter. If it's impossible and you have no intent, of course, what are you supposed to do? What's the machlekes? The loy efshar v'kam mechavin, and this is obviously the line which changed. When it's impossible, but you had kavanah. You didn't have to be, it was impossible. You didn't intend for it. You didn't have to be there. But then in kavanah, you thought about it and you wanted it. According to Rav Shimon, then you go with the person's kavanah. Says Gemara, of course it's aser. Over here, you're kumachavin. You're having intent. I want to smell this. I'm enjoying this smell. Of course it's forbidden. Keep ligi was the machlekes. Leave with Rav Yehuda. Dam relation miskavim, relation miskavim. Efshar is aser. Abayik Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Yehuda, the only time I see davar shein miskavin When do I see davar shein miskaven? It's aser, says Rabbi Yehuda, because it was efsher. This case is efsher. You didn't have to be there. So, this case was, even though it was a loy efsher, but because you had kavana, says Abayi, he also like Rabbi Yehuda is going to be forbidden. And as we flip along to Chavav and Aleph, let's learn the top two lines. V'Rava Amar L'Chad Kan L'Kamer Rabbi Yehuda davar shein